Good morning. I'm Mark Allen with Gaber.io, and I'm here today with Alex Piskunov, a partner at Ruvento Ventures. Tongue-tied today. Good morning, Alex. How you doing? Or good afternoon, evening in your case.
Hi, Mark. It's a pleasure. Thanks for seeing me here.
Oh, thanks for joining us today. I know it's late there. I know you're in Asia right now, correct?
Yeah, in Russia, not in Asia, 8 p.m.
Really? I always thought Russia was part of Asia.
Well, it's a big country, huh? We have
Yeah,
a European part as well.
yeah. So to start with, can you share a brief background of yourself and your work experience?
Yeah, so I've been at Ruvento for the past 2.5 years. Grew up there originally from an associate's position, where I was mainly doing a few investment deals. We at Ruvento, we focus on the so-called deep tech. So this is areas like AI or quantum computing or robotics. So basically the areas of investment which require quite significant technological expertise and due diligence. And after I did those deals, which were primarily in the US, as that's our core market, I grew up to become an principal. So I run my own team. I was engaging far more closely with portfolio companies when it came to, helping them to expand internationally or secure further rounds and similar things. And since August of 2019, we've decided to sort of diversify our strategy a little bit, focus not only on US, but also in emerging markets like Eastern Europe, where I'm at the moment. So on the basis of that, I was promoted to the partner's position. Now I'm leading our investment initiatives in that space, as well as fundraising for the fund. So yeah. Before that, just briefly, so as you can see, I guess from my surname, I'm originally from Russia, but for most of my life, ever since I was 12 years old, I lived, studied, and worked in UK, graduated from school, went to Cambridge, then went to, the traditional route of somebody who wants to make something out of himself. I did IBM private equity, then ran my own startup for a bit, and now I'm in the VC field, which is similar to what I did before, but it's early stages and it's far more technological. So there are a lot more crazy ideas which we deal with on a daily basis.
No, and do you deal with seed funding, or are you at a higher level?
Well, we begin with seed. So we do a few seed stage deals, but it's mainly about Series A and beyond.
Okay, cool. So what has been your experience with remote employment, both, as a partner and before, when you were just a regular old guy at the office?
Well, as a regular old guy at the office, I guess we didn't really use that many remote working solutions. We had, Skype calls, investment committee meetings, all online, because our team is relatively small. It's spread across 3 offices. And so the partners have to be sort of running all over the world for meetings and stuff. And it was difficult to get everyone together. And we had some solutions when it came to, like Trello, so organizing business activities and stuff. But really, I'd say that our process has changed the most in terms of remote working once COVID hit. And there were good points, there were bad points, but overall, I guess we didn't really expect such a drastic change, in how we make our investment decisions, how we see potential startups and other investors. But to be honest, I guess it's here to stay for at least a bit longer. And even then, people would start to realize, how comfortable, how convenient some services which they previously didn't use actually are. So there will be a lot more demand for even some kind of niche pieces of software.
Yeah, and it's interesting, since you are in the VC world. I old days, last year, the VCs wanted to go out and meet the executive team in person, right? And you can't do that now. So how do you compensate for that?
Well, that's true. I mean, despite COVID, we're still not going to sign checks unless we actually, see the entrepreneur in person, shake his hand, and whatnot, because often case it happens that an online persona and a physical persona are very different.
Mhm.
And you don't just see the entrepreneur, you also see his team, you see his offices to try and understand how everything is organized, because it's always a good opportunity to do some extra due diligence. And because we invest in early stages as well as at later stages where there are actually some financials, we do try and mitigate risks, because we understand that at earlier stages, we would see a potential exit only 3 to 5 years down the line, which is already a very significant time frame. So we have to try and predict as much as we can.
Mhm.
And to keep answering your question, so we try and mitigate this disadvantage of not being able to see the entrepreneur by conducting all the preliminary due diligence processes and things that we can. For example, trying to understand the market better, talking to potential clients online, talking to previous investors that believed in this company beforehand, and talking to our external due diligence experts as well, which are guys in universities who primarily deal with theoretical research in the field, or maybe top levels of corporations who are integrating this solution in their business processes. And as a result, we try and sort of build a more sophisticated picture from all angles. And then the last step is actually, the physical meeting. And for that, if we do believe that everything went smoothly beforehand, we will fly in and, arrange all the meetings. But because, it's difficult to do them one by one.
Mhm.
One of the reasons why I'm here in Russia is because we have a few deals that are close to the top of the funnel in our investment processes. So one of the things I'm doing is actually seeing those entrepreneurs in person, shaking hands, and understanding which maybe 2 or 3 out of the 10 deals that made it so far are going to get made.
Interesting. So, and I mean, another thing with the pandemic, it really has changed business in America, and it's some businesses were hurt really bad, and some businesses actually were benefited by it. So, has that changed your outlook on who you could potentially fund, or because of the nature of your profile,
Well,
it didn't have a big difference?
Mark, I'd say that, to be honest, it's been a double-edged sword. So from one perspective, a lot of really cool startups and really technologically inclined founders are now on the market looking for some additional financing. And even if it's not financing, maybe the connections which we bring in terms of, to corporate players, to enhance their capacity to expand overseas, develop their products or other things. So now it's a lot easier to negotiate with them when it comes to the valuations, when it comes to our positions on the board and stuff. And also, we as a fund, I guess we were quite fortunate in that we didn't really invest in sectors which emerged to do poorly in this kind of situation. So no travel tech, no hospitality, but rather it's mainly about online services, RPA, so robotics, process automation, a lot of guys who have solutions for dark kitchens
Mhm.
and similar things. So now they're going up and up. And for us, it's actually a good opportunity to get more hands-on when it comes to helping them out. That was a good part. The bad part is that at the moment we're also fundraising. And just like we as a VC fund are going to be a little bit more cautious and skeptical when it comes to giving money to a startup, we also understand that when it comes to dealing with LPs, with some potential investors, it's going to be also a little bit more time consuming, and it's going to involve a final handshake process, which often case is going to be quite difficult to arrange, given that, next week, I'm not that sure which countries are going to be staying open for business.
I know
And we have we have, for example, a few potential investors in Europe, specifically in Switzerland, that would like to continue our negotiations with. But at the moment, I guess our processes with them are delayed, and that's been a bit of a downside. But I guess overall, we are VCs, and for VCs, any crisis is also an opportunity. So I definitely would expect a lot more unicorns to come out of this crisis. So yeah, but best to sort of keep, the eyes open and spot the new trends.
Yeah, I mean, just thinking out of the box a little, right? You never know what is going to be the next big thing, right? Who would have known a year ago to invest in Zoom, right?
There is Zoom, and there is also a little Asian company called Zoom Technologies, who are, I think, also trading. And because many traders are not very sophisticated when it comes to picking their stocks, and because Zoom Technologies stocks are named similarly, when Zoom went up, these guys also went up, but by a greater margin, because initially they were trading at so much smaller margin. So yeah, it's good to take risks, but only if they're informed ones. Otherwise, you'll be hanged out to dry.
Yeah, that would be interesting to buy Zoom Technologies and find out it has nothing to do with this.
Yeah.
So what do you think is the future of remote employment, and what do you think can be done differently to make it more effective?
Well, so when we are looking at trends on some specific startups for potential investment, one of the things that we spotted and we like in terms of our previous investment efforts and such is regarding startups who try and have displays at maybe entry points, exit points of buildings to collect data of whom goes in, who goes out, and to be able to sort of track employees as they move along their daily business within the office. So from one perspective, I guess this thing is kind of Orwellian, right? So something that you normally see in China, but actually it's very useful for the managers and very useful for understanding, how to organize operations in remote locations better, as well as maybe to pair this information with data regarding fitness or advertising and similar things. So definitely gives better opportunities for employees how to use the data that they've gathered. And yeah, that was one trend. I think another trend that we recently saw, we looked at a Y Combinator company called Somatic, I think, and these guys, they have a robot for remote cleaning of toilets. And yeah, I think this technology is quite interesting, and it's definitely going to be far more relevant than it used to be because, the materials are getting cheaper and especially in the developed countries like the US, the cost for cleaners are getting up and up and up, while the cost for robots are only decreasing. So provided that these guys can actually, make robots that fit into a wide variety of potential bathrooms and toilet boxes, then I think they'd be quite in demand. But, other than that, I'd say that the main trend that we saw was regarding teleworking and things. So you've already mentioned Zoom, which is used for conversations. And for us, another thing that we like, well, actually, we have a portfolio company in the space. It's called Electronic. These guys have an RPA solution. So basically, they are automating routine functions within small and medium enterprises, like, for example, email processing or signing of documents or some logistical chains and such. So basically, they are competing with the likes of UiPath, which are a US-based company, and Blue Prism, which is out of Europe. And when we were considering whether or not to invest in this sphere and this particular startup, what we really liked, as you know, this industry is actually growing really rapidly because Electronic in particular, they are focusing on their medium-sized enterprises who are already able to sort of afford the larger checks, but also bound to be growing quite significantly over the next 5 to 10 years time. So provided that these guys can, present a coherent and desirable product and establish initial relationships, then later on down the line, they can really benefit from the growth of their clients by expansion of their potential business. And when it comes to, the RPA, I believe that is definitely going to be one of the outcomes of the COVID crisis and the trend towards remote working, because RPA helps to make some functions which used to be done by human employees, which are now redundant. And as a result, you don't only save costs, you don't only save time, but you're also able to sort of be less reliant on whether a potential employee is sick, where exactly is he working, is it at his office, is it at home? Because yes, it's getting increasingly easy to work from home, but there are also far more distractions. Now look at me, like in the beginning, I'd say that it's been a novelty, to work from home, to live from home. But later on, as weeks went by, it's been just one kaleidoscope picture, which looks very similar from one day to another. So it's getting increasingly difficult to sort of keep all the processes as efficiently running as before, and to actually coordinate them with others. And because I have other distractions at home, like my cat or like other things, it's also very difficult to pretend that I'm now at the office. So RPA helps to avoid those kind of situations, and I think that it's definitely going to be on the rise over the next years to come.
So, do you have a home in Moscow and a home in the US, or are you in a hotel now?
I have a home in the US now. I'm staying at the least accommodation because I flew in for a few months, I think. And it's definitely easier to sort of do so than go to a hotel, because a lot of hotels are getting canceled right now, and bookings are very unreliable. So I wanted to avoid that, because even though hotels are more central than where I live right now, which is good for meetings, I'd rather not, run all over the city trying to sort accommodations when I have business negotiations to attend with.
Yeah. So we've talked a fair amount about Ruvento already, but you're in like three hotspots here: AI, quantum computing, and robotics. Is there one you concentrate in more than the other, or is it pretty much spread out pretty evenly?
Well, I'd say that, for example, we've only recently begun to look at the field of quantum computing. And personally, I'm really excited about this area because, in comparison to, for example, AI or robotics, quantum computing is relatively new. It's been maybe out of the theoretical research field only since the 2000s. And as a result, there are maybe a few big corporations who have some significant research in the space. There are a few sort of grown-up startups. And there is a very small amount of startups who are actually worth their salt in this field. So for us as a VC fund, it's actually a good opportunity to go around the whole market, which is currently small, by comparison, to AI, to robotics, to speak to everyone, understand where their competitive strengths are, and where do we see their vision heading in terms of our own vision as well. And as a result, by making 2 or 3 informed bets on the whole market, I think we'll be able to make maybe 1 or 2 unicorns out of that, which is, as you know, a very good position for a VC to be in. And I think that the quantum computing field is also exciting because, right now it's rapidly growing, because only now the computational capacities have grown to an extent where they can actually be used in the fields of manufacturing, in research and stuff. But once 5G onset is on, then the speeds will increase even further. So it will be easier to display the results, which would be desirable for corporations or for the public markets. And as a result, the startups, which are maybe small by comparison at the moment, in the quantum computing field, they will actually be growing exponentially. So it's a good opportunity for VC funds to actually be looking, I think. And in terms of robotics and AI, I'd say that we do have a bit more investments in robotics. But to be honest with you, I'd say that AI is a field which is far more applicable towards a multitude of industries. For example, you can have AI solutions for fintech. You can have AI solutions for fintech and robotics at the same time. And this is because artificial intelligence doesn't have to be physical. And as a result, it's so much easier to scale. And it's so much easier to have a product which is small to be growing rapidly and to be more visible from the viewpoint of both an investor and the customer across the different markets. So for us as a VC fund, it's more convenient to invest in AI projects because as industries grow, the AI solutions can be applied to the multitude of those industries and they can be scalable worldwide. While hardware projects like robotics, sure, they're very much in demand. For example, we have a company called X Robotics in our portfolio. These guys have a robot for manufacturing different kinds of food for restaurants, for example, pizza. And as I mentioned earlier on, right now, they're really growing rapidly because of the onset of dark kitchens. And dark kitchens are basically kitchens which don't cook for the restaurant, but rather straight away for the delivery process, right? So you don't need cooks, you don't need expensive waiters. And so it's cheaper, it's quicker, and it's more convenient. And now these guys, X Robotics, they are past the development stage of their commercial product. Now they are rapidly growing their pilot and contract processes in the
Interesting.
US.
So, I mean, that seems like a logical thing for the current situation. I've never heard of the term dark kitchen before, but it could be, you know, a wave of the future, right?
Yeah, I definitely think, well, you know, previously, looking back at my own behavior when it comes to restaurants, I prefer to, you know, eat out just because it's not only an opportunity to try better food, but it's also a different experience. And I think that once COVID impact subsides a bit, people would not stop going to restaurants. And actually, in the short run, they would go even more because they would be missing that experience. But at the same time, people would start to realize, you know, how convenient it is if you're working late to not go out to cook something for yourself, to rather than order something as a delivery. And I remember a week when I was stuck indoors, I was ordering and ordering and ordering all the way from the different delivery places out there. But from a personal perspective, I guess that if you are stuck indoors and if you eat deliveries all the time, then it also starts to get into your head because they start to become very repetitive. While personally, I found that, you know, if you cook or if you go out to restaurants, you are far more engaged in the process, right? You see other people around you, you're actually able to sort of feel the atmosphere. And if you're cooking, then it's a far more immersive process. So I think that not only deliveries of cooked food will grow, but also some kind of maybe meal boxes or startups or services which would encourage you to cook something by yourself. But it's not something related to the future work, I guess.
Yeah, no, you're right. But it's the way the future is going in general, right? It's going towards that trend, right? More convenience, you know, get more done in a day. And if it takes 2 hours to make a meal, you can have it brought to you from a dark kitchen, you know, delivered. That sounds even better, right?
Indeed.
Yes.
And, you know, when it comes to innovations in the food space in that regard, I also saw a few companies who are sort of making autonomous vehicles who maybe cook pizza, deliver it to you, or it's like a remote shop which has some kind of preset menu, and you can order groceries, sandwiches, coffee, and whatnot. You can order it from a specific depot to come straight to your home, which is also quite convenient, I guess.
Mhm.
And it's cheaper than a standard delivery from a supermarket will cost you.
Wow, that's amazing. So to finish, there's companies like Gaper that help develop, build, and scale products, especially for startups. You invest in startups, right? So
Yeah.
how do you see that field going in the future? And is that something you talk to your investor, your executives about? Is using companies like Gaper, or what any of our competitors are just offshoring a lot of work? Is that something you actually look for when you look at companies?
Well, to be honest, when it comes to offshoring a lot of work and stuff, I guess, well, for us personally, and I guess for most of other VC funds, the main function that is kept indoors, I mean, in-house, right, is the actual investment team members. So guys who look for startups, who try and arrange communications with founders, who do analytics, while if your fund is not a mega fund like Sequoia or Andreessen, right? You wouldn't really be trying to keep everything else in house, like, for example, your lawyers or your accountants. So, for example, we are headquarters in Singapore. We have very close links with professional services firms out there, which is really helpful for us because, they are really knowledgeable about Anglo-Saxon law, about venture capital valuations and due diligence processes. So we are able to keep it out of their hands, and at the same time understand that they're not gonna make a bad job out of it. But recently, another interesting trend I saw when it comes to the outsourcing and replacing the work of the actual investment team members were startups in the field, maybe AI angel investor, right? Which tries to, based on your own preferences in terms of industry, geography, and stage, to recommend to you some specific startups for investment, to conduct some kind of preliminary due diligence process for you. It's not going to be as complicated or substantial as you would do at a VC fund, but if you're an individual angel investor who is thinking to commit maybe up to 500K, then it's definitely going to be some additional source of information for you. And other than that, obviously some angel syndicates, like, for example, run by AngelList, which help you to share the costs of due diligence, which help you to sort of pool different backgrounds together to arrive at a more informed decision. So I think that from the perspective of a VC, there are definitely processes that are changing, but personally, I do hope that it's not going to be soon that we all get replaced by our AI overlords, right? And as a VC, your main business is a people's business, right? So it's whom you know, not what you know, because you always have to be connecting your portfolio companies to corporations for pilots, your LPs to startups, and as such. So it's a lot more about handshakes. And so far, at least as long as I checked, I don't think AI can do that. So I think we're safe.
I think you're safe for a while. Yeah, I think you're good. Well, Alex, this has been fascinating. It's really interesting to hear these perspectives from the venture capital point of view, as opposed to the CEO or CIO point of view. I hope you have a successful trip to Moscow and to Eastern Europe. And thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you for your time, Mark. It's been a pleasure.
All right, have a great night.
You too.